Hey guys, how you doing? So I kind of dropped the ball when I put up the video about the Nayar family. So I've made the video private and I will try and explain it better in this one. Hopefully I can convey what I want to clearly this time. I'm going to talk about the Nayar caste which exists in India. The Nayars are a group who currently follow the patriarchal system, but in the past they were a matriarchy. The reason I looked into the Nayar society in the first place and wanted to tell you about it is because it gives us an insight into what society would be if it was a matriarchy. One of the possible scenarios of what women would do if they were at the helms of power and decision making. Let's start off, shall we? Now, so the Nayars are often called one of the best societies that ever existed in the state of Kerala, which is in the southern part of India. That's where I'm from. Now, of course, I don't agree, and you'll soon see why. First, we're going to talk about the lineage and property. Now, Nayars followed the matrilineal form of inheritance and lived in units called Tharavada, which is a Malayalam name for matrilineal joint family home. In India, joint families were extremely common up until the previous generation. It still exists in a lot of places, even now. What happens in a joint family home is everyone in the family lives under the same roof. Parents, their sons, and daughter-in-laws. That's the scenario in a patriarchal family. The families, their sons, and daughter-in-laws. In the joint family homes of Nayars, however, the mother lived along with her daughters and son-in-laws. The properties were passed on through the daughters of the family, and men inherited nothing from their parents. So, straight away, we have men who have no rights when it comes to lineage or when it comes to any sort of property. Now, we move on to the marriage system, and this is where it gets really interesting. So, they have this thing called the Sambandham ritual, which is a form of marriage in Nayar families. It is less auspicious than the normal marriage rituals, which were more commonly followed across India. Sambandham literally means alliance or relationship. It was the customary institution that framed casual marriage alliances between men and women. Now, this ritual marks the union of the bride and groom and was not necessarily a permanent arrangement. The typical Nayar marriage ceremony was simple. Actually, it was extremely simple. The bridegroom would give a piece of cloth, usually a munda, to the bride in front of a lamp in the presence of the senior most lady of the family who holds the greatest power in that family. The husband would spend a few days at the bride's house and then return to his own joint family home. This marriage was based on mutual consent and was dissoluble at will, which in simpler terms comes to whenever the woman wants to get rid of the man, she can, without any sort of repercussions. Now, this was viewed by European commentators as immoral, allied with polyandry or even prostitution. The truth was, Sambandham was nothing of that sort for Nayar women. Sambandham was the temporary alliance. Now, the temporary alliance essentially gave a Nayar woman the liberty to initiate consent to or terminate a sexual relationship with any man, and thereby formed one of the foundations of the matriarchy. In simple words, it gave them the ability to use men purely to procreate, throw one away whenever they felt like it, and take on another man at will. A man would never marry, as we know today, and start a family with their children. Instead, he would have to visit a lady in her home every now and then solely for sexual purpose, and he would have no right to the offspring from that relationship. So the succession was taken care of by women, and they formed large establishments and managed their affairs independently without the men. Now, if you have seen my video on caste, you're aware that Brahmins hold the highest position in the caste system in India. Now, Brahmins in Kerala permitted only the eldest son to marry within the caste, and so the younger sons in these families were expected to establish a relationship with Nayar women. Nayar families encouraged the temporary alliance arrangement with these Brahmin men. It is an alliance and was the form of marriage practiced. It was often seen by the rest of the country as Nayar women being concubines of the Brahmins. The truth, however, is that they chose to create a temporary relationship with the upper caste in order to increase their status. So this was in truth a form of hypergamy. Now, it's not to say that they did not marry Nayar men, but the truth is there were rarely enough Nayar men to go around. Now, if they did marry a Nayar man, It was the men who had to go to the woman's house, unlike in patriarchal marriages, where the woman comes to the house and stays till she dies or he dies. Now, in this particular marriage, or temporary marriage, the men had to go to the woman's house, and he could not sleep with her every night. The men could only visit the women's chambers for the purpose of sex. The other times they'd have to stay in another house altogether. Nayar women could also take as many husbands as they wanted. It is said that the bedroom of a Nayar woman had 2 doors leading to it. It was supposedly made this way so that one husband could leave through one door and the other husband could enter through the other. Now, all this time I've been talking about women because that's what most historians talk about. They speak about the rights of women, the liberties they have, and the status that women held in this particular society. But you know what? Let's go ahead and take a look at the men, what their rights were, and what their jobs were. Men had absolutely no rights to their own child, or even their own body. The Nayar men were warrior class men. About 90% of them fought for the king's army. I keep wondering if this was entirely their choice. All young Nayar men from the age of 12 were expected to attend a martial arts school named Kalaris, where they were taught the famed martial arts practice in Kerala called Kalari Paite. At the age of 18, their training would be complete, but they were expected to be available for military duty at a day's notice. This is nothing less than conscription. A man given absolutely no choice, and he lived his adult life purely to fight and die for his king. This was called glory. I'm sorry, but in what way was this glory? You tell me to fight and die for some dipshit, and that my death on the battlefield would be glorious? I would ask you to fuck off. But I guess the early indoctrination of the warrior mentality in Nayar boys were pretty strong. The social obligation would have been another factor which encouraged these young men to fight and die. The men in this society were treated as pawns, and they are dubbed as a society of historical importance and what a society should be like in the present. There is a high probability that feminists would look at this matriarchal form of society where men were more disposable than anywhere else in India or the world for that matter as their endgame, where men had absolutely no rights to property, their child, or even to choose their field of work. This is a society touted by many as a trademark matriarchal society, a society where women's rights were everything, a culture that is respected even in this present day. Okay, let's just get back to the matter. Now, the kings gifted land and workers to the families of men who fought for him. So, the Nayar women actually gained land and workers for sacrificing their sons, husbands and brothers to the army. They did not have to work on the fields either because the work on the land would be done by the workers or laborers, and the only thing they would have had to do was cook at home. In the rare case, they did not have a servant for that. This is what feminists would make society if left to themselves, a system where men were nothing more than cannon fodder. I would like to ask every one of you a simple question. When is the last time you heard, "Oh, this country is great because it treats their men right"? I'm guessing never. The worth or status of a culture is defined by how the women are treated. It's only the lives and rights of women that mattered, and the rights of men were and are never given any sort of importance. The unnerving support of this historical society is further evidence that it's not what men do or what rights they have that defines the success of a society, but what men do for women and the rights of women in that particular society. This is how gynocentric our world is. Now, it pissed me off when I was talking to these men about their history, because they spoke of it with pride. What was going through my mind while I spoke to these men was how entrenched female approval is in our genes. How these men I spoke to were so happy that in their history women held all the power. I doubt these men even cared about how disposable the men were in the society. A society and culture purely based on female approval, and males sacrificed their lives in order to try and earn it. I doubt they ever got it because these women only cared about themselves. They gave no shits about how their sons, brothers and part-time husbands sacrificed their lives so they could reap the benefits of their sacrifice and live a life of comfort. I have no doubt in my mind that cultures would be similar to this if women were given all the power. Even in a patriarchy, men have lesser rights than women. I can't imagine what a matriarchy would look like in the current age. Men would be nothing but beasts of burden, not that we aren't that now, but at least we have a choice in deciding what we want. Patriarchy is about male sacrifice for the betterment of society, but matriarchy was nothing more than the rounding up of men to treat as chattel for women so they could reap the benefits of what men do without having to give anything back. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope I did a better job of explaining myself in this particular video on why I looked into this society and how it worked. The two of you who commented on the video, I didn't want to name you because I'm not sure if you want to be named or not. Thanks for your feedback and let me know if this made more sense. I'm always open to criticism or any sort of feedback. Don't hold back, alright?